This video is brought to you by patreon.com/worsttake. Get access to exclusive live streams and Discord servers, on-screen shoutouts, and early access to some videos when you join now. Help make sure that we can continue to make content like this by supporting the Patreon. Links are in the description down below. So the Browns took at pick 85 Zack Zinter, and we all thought, or at least I thought, that it was very possible that the Cleveland Browns got out of here with a tackle and a guard. The reason for drafting a tackle would obviously be Jed Wills is on the last year of his contract. You want to make sure that the contract negotiations get to a point to where you don't feel like it matches the value that Jed brings, that you're willing to move on because you have somebody waiting in the wings. Right now, the Browns really don't have anybody waiting in the wings unless Dawand Jones is their backup plan at tackle, which might be something that they're considering, right? Like, he's not going to play left tackle this year, obviously, but maybe they think, hey, if Jed does walk, or if we don't want to re-sign Jed next year, then we make the transition to put Dawand at left tackle, and then we keep Jack Conklin on his current deal at right tackle. So that might be part of the solution for the Cleveland Browns, and they felt like Dawand Jones is a better backup plan than taking a Kingsley or taking a Roger Rosengarten. But we all thought the tackle could be something that they can consider because of that situation. Offensive guard was another one that I felt like the Browns were going to heavily consider in this draft, especially in that 54 to 85 range that they were picking in day two, because you knew that guards were going to be available. I mean, Christian Haynes was available up until like 2 picks before you, and Christian Haynes is pretty universally looked at as the best guard in this draft class. He wasn't the first guard taken, but a lot of people see him as the best guard in this draft class. But the reason the Browns would be considering a guard here, 2 reasons. One, Wyatt Teller is expensive. He hasn't really played up to that 2020 level in a little while. And you might want some flexibility to get off of his contract in a year or two to bring somebody else in at a different position. Also, Joe Bitonio. He's a 10-year vet at this point. He's been with the team forever. He's been through a lot of different changes on that offensive line. And he started to have back issues the last couple of years. And if there's one area where you got to start preparing for the future once you see it, it's back issues in the athlete, right? So they saw those back issues and they probably thought to themselves, hey, we want to be prepared just in case Joel has to retire or there's an injury here. Another reason why they want to go with guard is because guard, you had some injuries last year, not really at guard, but if you do have injuries at guard this year, you want to be able to be in a position to where you feel like you have a guard in the wings that's ready. Now, last year they took Luke Whippler, who played some guard in emergency situations, but is more of a center. And I think Luke Whippler will eventually get a chance to start at center for the Cleveland Browns because everything seems to be going well with him outside of him being a 6th-round pick. Zack Zinter, the pick out of Michigan, is a choice that they're going to make that they feel like he's going to start at guard eventually, right? Maybe Joe Bitonio retires within the next few years. Maybe they move on from Joe Bitonio. Maybe they move on from Wyatt Teller. Now, all of his snaps throughout his college career, he played 3 years at Michigan, and he played all of his snaps on the right side at guard. So he's a right guard as of right now. That's where Wyatt Teller plays. The measurables are impressive on Zack Zinter. He broke his leg versus Ohio State this year, so he didn't get to participate in the Senior Bowl. He didn't get to participate in the Combine, which would have been very intriguing to see because athleticism was one of those things people were worried about with Zack Zinter. But he's 23 years old. He's 6'6", 322 pounds, so a mountain of a man playing guard. And he has impressive grades, right? He was a unanimous All-American this year. He's 2-time All Big Ten, and he was one of the best offensive linemen in one of the best offensive lines in the country. He was who Jim Harbaugh really leaned on to run the ball behind, so much so that when he went out versus Ohio State, an entire crowd of people were chanting Zack Zinter. That's not a lie. I didn't make that up. That actually happened. People were chanting the name of an offensive lineman. So the potential is there. He definitely has the tools. This is a swing for a big hit that the Browns are going after, right? A big guy. He had injury concerns. Is why he fell in the draft, because he broke his leg. People didn't get to get a good enough look at him, answer some questions they might have had about him. The Browns are taking a chance because you don't have the information about him that you have about other guys like Christian Haynes, Cooper Beebe, who went before him. But the upside is similar to those guys. He measured in at the combine with 33.5-inch arms, so he's nice and long. He measured in actually down at 309, so lost some weight. And then official height is 6'6", so again, he is a giant man. Hopefully he can move well. Hopefully he can pass protect. He was one hell of a run blocker at Michigan, and the Browns are going to run the ball a ton still, even though that they're switching the offense over. I don't think the run game is not going to be a part of what the Cleveland Browns do here. There are some concerns about his level of play versus high-level teams. If you look at Michigan's schedule, the teams he beat up on, right, where he has his highest pro football focus grades. I'm looking at him right now. UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, Purdue. Had a good game versus Penn State. That is there. But then Maryland, right? Not the big dogs of the Big Ten outside of Purdue, but Ohio State wasn't really a great game for him. Minnesota, Nebraska, Michigan State, not really great graded out games for him, right? So you worry about that. You worry about the injury. Now, he went on radio and said that that leg is completely 100% fully healed up. So if that's the case, if he's fully healed, if he's ready to go for camp and off-season practices and everything else, that's fine. Now, how do I feel about this pick? I like it. I wanted a guard. I want the Browns to get a guard coming out this draft. It's going to be interesting to see if the Browns are going to be able to get a tackle, right? Because right now, Christian Jones is probably the only guy I like in this draft that plays tackle. So I don't know if they're going to be able to get a tackle. Maybe they go at the tight end. Maybe their prerogative shift because of how the board has landed. But getting a guard, getting a defensive tackle, I'm not upset at that. It's not going to be sexy, right? Like when you draft a guard who's going to play probably in a year or two, and you draft a defensive tackle who's going to be rotational in year one and maybe an impact player in year 2 or 3. None of this feels sexy, but what they did with Michael Hall's got somebody super young that they feel has a ton of potential that can fill a gap that they have long-term at defensive tackle. And now what they're doing with Zack Zinter is getting a guy who's big, has big swing potential, will probably be tackle eligible for this team. If you look at that size, 6'6", 322, and his ability to move as a guard and get low, he's probably going to be tackle eligible for this team. That's probably going to be the role that he's going to have. But also somebody who, if there is an injury, he can step in, you feel good about. And if there isn't an injury, he's just there to develop and get depth behind this offensive line. This is to make sure that you can keep protecting guys. You can keep protecting Deshaun Watson. You can keep protecting Nick Chubb, that you can keep these guys protected and you can keep Nick Chubb running free in those lanes for years to come. So it's not a sexy pick. I understand people's lack of excitement over a pick like this, but what the Browns are doing is that they're building towards the future. And one thing I do want to reflect on before I end this video is it's a much better place to be in for your overall team. Like, I get that the draft isn't exciting as it used to be, that you don't get as hyped up about the draft as you used to be. And I'm going to be honest with you, like, the Browns are going to have a first round pick next year, but that's not going to rekindle that excitement. The Browns really aren't at a place where they're going to have a ton of exciting drafts. They're going to have drafts that are going to be about the year ahead and maybe the year after that. When the Browns start having exciting drafts, it's going to be because the win total is going to be dropping down significantly, right? And that they're not going to have as many talented players. But right now, this roster has a ton of talented players locked in at the ages of 25 to 27, which means that the drafts, they're going to be about the future for the next few years, guys, that you're not going to see for a couple of years. So yes, it's not exciting, but as a Browns fan who sat through the 2000s with this team, who sat through the many tough eras of non-existent offensive play and non-existent defensive play, that sat through the eras where you would hear people constantly bemoan and talk about how they just want the team to be competitive, as a Browns fan who sat through our desire to just be 500, I'm not going to poo-poo on what we're living through right now, because we're literally living through what I hope that this Browns team would get to for basically my entire life, right? The draft is not exciting. We used to joke about this. One day the draft won't be exciting. Well, it's here. The draft is not that exciting to us. Even if we had a first round pick, it wouldn't have been that exciting, because they would have been taking an offensive lineman in the first round, or maybe a defensive tackle, but it wouldn't have been super exciting. It would have been great if we could have got some action, traded up for Johnny Newton. It would have been great if we could have got some action and got Keon Coleman at 54, but that's not how the draft board played out. That's not how these opportunities lined out. So they kind of were able to just get some guys that they liked, right? Michael Hall, Zack Zinter. Now, I will say Zack Zinter is a little bit of a sneaky steal, right? Because if he doesn't get that injury, he probably goes up there with Cooper Beebe, with Christian Haynes, a little bit ahead of where the Browns got him. So maybe the injury helps you in the long run if you're Cleveland, to be able to get a player. He's back from that injury. He says he's fully healed from that injury. And before that, he was a unanimous selection to be a All-American. So there's tons to get excited about when it comes to Zack Zinter, but the Browns draft Zack Zinter. This is a guard. They're going to expect him to start in a year or two. So left or right, it's going to be a question of what position opens up first, right? Does Joe Bitonio start to age? Does Wyatt Teller start to decline? If that happens, they're going to be ready. And the same way where we drafted DeJuan Jones, we're like, well, how's he going to play? Is he going to play? Because there's no spot for him. Things end up figuring themselves out. And I think Zack Zinter is going to be fine. He's going to be a good NFL player, and he's going to be a good guard for this team. So I'm excited about the pick. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.